Hello everyone. In this assignment you will be building a dichotomous key. So this is building on the dichotomous keys we did in the lesson. So a dichotomous key, again, the idea of this is you're taking characteristics or morphology of different species and you're sorting them based on always using two categories. So you split by 2, by 2, by 2, by 2. So what you're going to be doing in this one is you're going to be making one in order to create a key for taxonomic identification. So I'm not going to read through all of this. That is something you're going to do when you get the time. But basically it's just explaining what you're going to be doing and some details you should be thinking about. But I'm going to go to the actual assignment itself to focus on some things. So I did point out some things to remember here as well. One thing I'm going to point out, so actually I'll jump ahead and then I'll come back to this, and I'll come back to that as well. So what you're doing is you're creating a dichotomous key for these alien species. Now you get to name them yourself, so the name is totally up to you. As the biologist or the taxonomist that found them, it's up to you to name them. So my first suggestion is for each one, just give them a name, just write them down right there. Above the numbers. So number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. So have their name somewhere on there. Now the naming system, and I'm going to skip back up here. The naming system is based on a binomial system. So just like we use here. So remember there's always genus and species. Now the genus will be the same for everyone. The genus is Alienus. So Alienus is the genus for everyone. So whatever names you pick, that's always your genus. Your species name, though, is up to you. So the species name you pick for each one, and each of the 10 should have a completely different species name. So species, just like we have dogs and cats and lions, these all should have different names like that. So that's your first step. Once you do that, your second step is to start to build your key. Now, in order to build your key, you have to figure out what are you going to pick as your characteristics. So just like we did in class, you have to choose what is it that you're going to use to separate things. And again, they should be dichotomous. So you should have two things. So for example, don't say 1 foot, 2 foot, 5 foot, 10 foot, 11 foot, because that's not dichotomous. You can say something like 2 feet or more than 2 feet. That would be an example of a dichotomous split because you're splitting it into two things. So once you have that, you're going to create this chart here, or you're going to fill in this chart here, and it's going to explain the dichotomous key. So what you would do is you would start off with your two first characteristics. So let's use my example. Let's say I have 2 feet, or let's say, I guess, do any of these have, some of these don't have feet, so that's probably a bad example. So let's go feet or no feet. That's my first one. So I would put here, if under A, I would write feet. Under B, I would write no feet. Now, for 1A, if they have feet, I would tell people which step to go to next. So usually you do this where you just write, for example, number 2. And then for 2, when you're in this section of 2, all of these have feet because they already satisfied that requirement under 1A. So they all have feet, and now step 2 is, well, how many feet do they have? So going back to the list, I can see, let me look here. This one here has 4. This one has 2. And I think those are the only 2 with feet, actually. So that probably wasn't the best choice, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So then I would put 2 feet or more than 2 feet. Or you can even be specific here and say 4 feet if you want. So then for 2A, I would write 2 feet. And then for 2B, I would write more than 2 feet. Now, because for 2A, there's only one species that has 2 feet and that has feet in general, here I would just write the species name. So this one here, this number 2 up here is the only one that has 2 feet. So I would write here under 2A whatever the species name is. So Alienus, Fido, or whatever I pick. For 2B, again, in this example, there's only one, so I would write their species name here. If there was still multiple options, then you'd have to go to another step. Now, the one I picked is not a good example because your dichotomous key will be very skewed because there's only really 2 on this side, which means all the other 8 end up on the other side. So I probably wouldn't pick feet as the first thing because only these 2 have feet. So I would say find something that's a little more common. Try to make the first split as close to you can as like 5 and 5. It just makes the key a little bit neater, and I'll show you that in a moment. So once you're done filling out the chart, on the right side here, you'll have all the numbers. And if you don't have any numbers, eventually you'll have all the species names. And you know you're done when all 10 of the species names end up somewhere on this side here. So once all that is done, you're actually going to create the key. So notice at the bottom I put you are getting 10 marks for the key itself. I use the chart to help you figure out how you did the key. You can draw this anywhere you want. You can do it, I guess there's no extra sheet here. You can just do it on a Word document, or you can do it on paper and take a picture and just attach it in, however you want to do that. So that would be the second part. So I do want to point out, please don't forget to do this. I don't want you to fill out the chart and not do this and lose a ton of marks because you didn't actually draw it. So I'm going to show you an example of this. So here I've just created kind of an idea of the problem with the one I just made. So if you start off with 2 feet feet and no feet as your initial characteristic. Whoops. Okay, so I'm not going to bother erasing that. So if you start off with feet up there, and then this one down here is no feet. The problem with this is that most of them end up here. So you can see most of them are over here, and up here you only have 2. And that's really unbalanced, and it gets really messy, as you can see me struggling to fit it all in. So my suggestion is for the first splits, try to find something that splits them kind of evenly, and then from there continue on. So that's my little suggestion to you. A couple other reminders: when you are creating the lines, make them go to the same spot. So notice I sort of tried to line them all up here. The reason being it's easier to read. When you get to the end, you're just going to put the name. So here I have alienus, and whatever name I have would go in there, and then this one would be alienus, whatever that is, and then each one of these would get their own name as well. So that should be the end. And the thing I'm marking for is the accuracy of this as well. So can I follow this backwards? So this person should have whatever this characteristic is, whatever this characteristic is, and they should have no feet. So it should match perfectly. And if there are any errors, I would be able to point those out to you. So that's a little bit about what that looks like. Just close that down. So once you're done all of that, the second part of this is just a couple of questions. So notice the number of lines. I'm not looking for very long answers. So the first question is, what is the purpose of a dichotomous key? So I don't mean just this key, but I mean, what are dichotomous keys used for in general? So you're giving me an explanation of, do you understand the point of a dichotomous key? The second is, why is a dichotomous key called a dichotomous key? So you'll notice in the course I do this a lot. I pull out the names and get you to really think about it. So why is it called dichotomous key? Why are all those parts of the words in there? What do they mean exactly? The third is it possible to create more than one dichotomous key for classifying and identifying the same group of objects? So if you take those same 10 aliens, and when everyone submits their assignments, are they all going to be exactly the same? If they are, explain how that's possible. If it's not, explain how that's possible. Number 4 is when 2 people use the same dichotomous key to identify the same object, is it possible for them to have different final answers? So to be clear, number 3 is saying if we have, or can you create more than one key? So can you have different characteristics of a key to create it? This number 4 is asking, if you have the exact same key, could you end up having a different answer? So if you use all the same characteristics for all the same species and 2 people did it, could you get different answers? So is it possible, or I put should it be possible, to have different answers? And again, you're going to explain that in some detail. So number 3 and number 4 are slightly different. If you're a little confused even after that explanation, please do let me know. And number 5, sort of the big idea in this is, why do we do this? Why do we classify and identify things? What's the point of it? What are some benefits of it? Why do we bother to spend all this time doing that? So that is the first assignment. I do want to point out at the bottom these categories. These are the different learning or assessment categories, I should say. So K/U is knowledge and understanding, thinking, investigation, and communication. So these will be explained more in the course outline video if you haven't seen that yet, but I do put these on all the assignments, and then your total in this case is 18. So that's your first assignment, and of course, if you do have questions, please let me know.